Okay, so in this step, what we're going to do is we're going to dump all the dough out onto the clean work surface. Using the dough scraper. Now this dough is typically a very wet dough, so it's a little tricky to handle, and you don't want to use a whole lot of flour at this point. So I'll use a little bit of flour. We're going to cut this in half. Using a bench knife. And what we want to do, you can lightly flour the top, or what's going to be the bottom here in a second. We want to flip this over. Fold this in half, and then just start making it into a round. Do a ball, and what you're doing with this pulling action is creating some strength in there by creating tension in there, if you can see that. So we'll flip this guy over, fold it in half, and do the same thing. We'll create a ball. You can see it's a little tricky to work with. And what we're going to do now is basically let this sit covered. There's a tricky way to cover it easily. Big Tupperware dish. And this is the bench rest, so that's just going to relax. And then we'll come back and form these in about 30 minutes or so into loaves to go into the proofing baskets. The baskets will be lined with flour, and then they'll be covered. But we'll do that here in just a second. So what I've decided is that they're starting to flatten out a little bit here. So I'm just going to essentially pull them back together. I'm going to use my bare hands to do this as opposed to the bench knife. But here, let's use the bench knife to get them rounded. Again, the concept is really just to build tension inside of this round. And creating a tight little package is what really what we're doing here. We're going to do it again. We're gonna do this again with a little bit more folding when we go to put them in the baskets, but that was sort of an interim step. You may not always have to do that, but if you find your dough slacking out a lot during this bench rest, it's a step you can take to kind of bring it back tight. Because in the end, it's the structure of the bread, the dough inside the bread, the strands that you want to work to get that structure so that it holds it together and makes a nice big loaf that rises and is nice and tight. Okay, so this part is going to be forming the loaves for the final proofing. These guys are going to get formed, put in the baskets. Let's get started. So I will use a little bit of flour. This is going to get turned over. And then it's going to be a folding method. Make sure that's in the video. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab this front end, pull it, stretch it. Left side, pull, and fold over about a 2/3. Right side, pull, and fold. Back side, stretch, fold. We're going to turn that over, and then we're going to do that same motion where we're pulling and just creating that tension inside that ball. I don't know if you can see how the surface, when I pull, it stretches. And I do that until the ball just starts to rip. I'm going to turn it over and lay it in the basket. Same process. A little bit of flour. Flip it over. Pulling that front side towards you, wrap it over. Underneath, left side, pull, stretch. Right side, pull, stretch. Back side, pull, stretch. Fold the whole thing over. And you can use some flour here if you want a little bit to keep your hands from sticking, but if you just use kind of quick, rapid, decisive movements. There's that, it's starting to tear right there, so we're good. You don't want to necessarily go to that point, but so then I'll take some flour, I'll dust around the sides. Just because that's where it's going to rise, and to prevent it from sticking to the baskets. Now these baskets were generally like liberally dusted with half and half of white rice flour and half whole wheat flour, so 50-50 in a mix. Dust the baskets, dust these loaves. I cover them with a plastic bag. These are actually plastic hairnets. They work great for this. And then these will sit someplace for a couple of hours. And they'll proof up. But that was that final loaf forming technique. Until next time, the dreaded dough hands.